we can all say, like, go for it, climb that mountaintop. There is nothing at the mountaintop. 24 hours, you will feel happy and you'll be back to it. And you'll just find another mountaintop and you'll waste your life climbing increasingly hard mountains that you don't even enjoy. So, what if you stepped back and really understood, what do I care about deeply? A problem that if I woke up every day and I focused on that problem, I would find enjoyment and I would find fulfillment.
This is Humble Mind. Welcome back. My guest today spans over 15 years chasing success in tech and venture capital, even co-founding a fund where he was able to raise over $100 million. He reached the top of his field and found a broken nervous system waiting for him there. He spent a year disconnected and rebuilding his life from the ground up, and now writes one of the most honest and bold Substack newsletters, certainly that I've found. And it's all about meaning, the meaning of acceleration and what it means and what is really waiting for us when we realize that what we want might cost us a little more than we thought. So I'm very happy to have Scott Barker on the conversation. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for the kind introduction. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I mean, I've found you on Substack, as I suppose many people have. Because I'm kind of in the Substack journey now, moving my community over to Substack and really just enjoying the openness, the fact that it feels a little more undiscovered than perhaps some of the other platforms. And then I came across your article, How to Prepare for the Next Decade. And that seems to have gone viral, if that term means anything. But certainly with, 6,000 likes, more than 1,600 restacks, something clearly hit a nerve there. So what do you think was in that piece, which kind of went through those 10 points of how to prepare yourself for the next decade? Do you think it was the timing? Do you think it was the honesty, the permission you were giving people to slow down? What do you think was part of what led to that reaction?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one I've thought a lot about. One of the reasons I think was because it was written with no intention whatsoever to go viral. It was written for myself to try and, like, all the advice I give is advice and exercises that I did that helped me over the span of my year try and fix my fragmented attention, my nervous system. And I had found I had actually come out on the other side, like, feeling pretty good, pretty calm, and pretty hopeful. And, when I look at that article, timing definitely played a role, because most of what was out there at the time, there was a lot of, like, doom and gloom. Like, we all feel this acceleration. We all feel these advancements in artificial intelligence moving too fast. But there was very little in the way of productive solutions. So if this is our reality, what do? It was all just, all our jobs are going to be taken, everyone's mind is being poisoned. And at the essence of that article is hope. Like, I really do believe that it takes more intention now. But some of these external forces are mechanisms to force us to go inward and work on some of these internal things that maybe in the past have felt like a luxury to focus on, our internal wellness. And now I think it's a forcing function because the external environment is so chaotic that we now have to. And so I think just putting language to what a lot of people were feeling is the reason it's resonated with so many, and it's crazy. It's like 300,000 people have read it, and it's like a long ass article.
Yeah.
It takes like 20 minutes to read. So all these people saying people don't have attention spans, and you just need to make TikToks and Instagram reels. Like, there is absolutely an appetite for long form, thoughtful writing.
Absolutely, I agree. And what a good thing that is, that it's not just about always zeroing in on what we're told is optimizing for shortening and shortening attention spans more and more, because that is true in one sense, but the fact that the appetite, it almost creates more of an appetite for what there isn't, which might be these longer conversations where you can expand beyond the soundbite. And yeah, yours definitely did. I'd love to zone in a bit on a little more about your story and ultimately kind of what got you to the point to write that article, where you were able to realize some of those beautiful, really kind of heartfelt and really quite necessary, rules for yourself, if you like, or principles, where you discovered those things beyond just something that sounds good as advice, but you actually realize that that's what you needed to do or are doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think many listeners of this podcast can relate to this idea that there's so much advice out there, and we're told so many cliches from the time we can understand them, but they don't land until we have like deep personal experience. Someone can tell you love is the answer all day long, and then like one day you're going to be sitting there in a really tough point or a really beautiful point and be like, holy shit, I get it. Like I get what they were saying. So it's this known and this felt experience. And why I felt it was necessary to write that article was because I had this really interesting vantage point. So in the article, I posit that we're about to head into what I call the acceleration decade. So the next 10 years, we're all going to be forced into this really fast, relentless period of change. Our job functions are going to change. The technology is going to change rapidly. And basically all the systems are going to change. And in my personal journey, I just lived through that. I had my own personal acceleration decade over the last 10 years. Now, it was a little different because I chose it. I had some, we'll call them character defects, that made me ridiculously ambitious, maybe a little insecure. I needed a lot of validation. I thought I needed a lot of money, a lot of status to feel safe. And so that led me down this journey of just always going for that next big thing, always looking for a promotion, always looking to start a new thing. And that worked in terms of, I guess, outward success. And I started as an operator in tech and rapidly grew my career until I was, running a fund that had 100 million under management. But what that required was constant change, constant growth, or what I thought was growth, and really this overriding of basic human needs, things like connection. I didn't see my friends and family very much because I was just so focused. And, a lot of these things I just thought were hindrances, like contemplation or reflection and all this stuff. That's like slowed me down. I just wanted to get to my goal and get to my outcome. And if you do that long enough, you get in a really weird place where you're very far off of your North Star, who you think you are. And for me, it turned into, they shared like a completely broken nervous system, to the point where outwardly everyone's saying, I have this great life. I have the house, I have the car, I have, all of the bullshit that we think we need, but I'm sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night. And, in order to focus, I need a pill now. And then I need a lot of poison and alcohol and other distractions just to calm down because I'm all hyped up. And then I'm sitting there awake at night, so I need another pill to sleep. And I'm having panic attacks in the shower. And, the acceleration decade I went through did not end well. And so I think my fear is that, yes, mine was by choice, don't need any sympathy. But when I look at this next 10 years, I think we're all going to be forced into a version of that, not by choice. And we need to set up practices and philosophies that are going to help us weather that storm so that we don't all end up like I was, really scattered, really scared, really confused.
Mm. Yeah, it's what's interesting is that as more and more of these kinds of conversations, whether you might want to call it burnout or searching for meaning, you mentioned a lot of meaning and the word meaning in your work and in your articles. The more this kind of becomes familiar territory, I think, for a lot of people to sort of see themselves in those kinds of stories. We've all maybe had a similar type of burnout story, maybe not the same place or the same circumstances, but the same feelings and the same sensations often, where there's been too much pressure and the juice is not worth the squeeze. Or, we worked hard to get to where we wanted to go. When we got there, there was that feeling. So I think that's great to be able to give that a voice. However, at the same time, I'm also seeing, and I'm curious as to what you think about this, that as more and more of those kinds of stories prevail and people talk about them, it also can become its own kind of commoditized practice in a sense, where I'm not saying you're doing this. I'm just saying like it almost becomes an industry before you even know it. Mm-hmm. And often that can kind of denigrate or sort of limit the amount of real insight that someone is opening themselves into in their story or in what they're trying to be willing to experience, because really it's actually turning out to be a great Instagram moment. Mm-hmm. So is there a way that you find that there could be a way to approach the story to make sure that it stays in the signal and not get lost in more of the noise, where really it's just in search of the next kind of commodified response, where really it looks like we're talking about something else, but we're actually in the same cycle? I wonder if you thought about that.
Totally, man. It's a great question. And I'll tell you, so when I started writing on my journey, I also don't want to sit here and pretend that I had some linear growth journey over the last year that like solved all my problems. Like I'm still learning, I'm still a mess in a lot of ways, and I'm just trying to get better every day. And there was a lot of fear, uncertainty, doubt, confusion, old patterns, old habits that reared their heads, and still continue to do so. When I started writing, I also have a podcast. It was truly like I was lost, man. I was so confused. And what happened in my story is I was sort of so broken at the time when I stepped down from the fund that my initial post was, I couldn't help but be like raw and honest. And I just shared, hey, listen, this is what I'm going through. Because I also had to explain it to people. I had investors and founders. I had to like tell people what's up. And when I told people my story, I was sort of shocked that I had people from all parts of my career, highly successful people on paper and people from all walks, reaching out to me and sharing bits and pieces of their story, things that they were going through, major health scares, battling cancer, losing loved ones, third divorces, like all of this stuff that I knew these people pretty intimately well, but I never knew about any of this stuff. Because every time I had a dinner with them, it was everything's great, family's good, our business is crushing it, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like so disillusioned by what I saw on social media. I was like, well, this is nothing like what I see on all these platforms. So I just started asking people, would you be comfortable sharing your story. And it was really a form of like free therapy for me. It really was like,
Yeah.
just like, wow, there's other people like me. And so that's kind of how I started sharing the story was therapy. And then as I kind of went, I started making a few connections that were helpful for me. And, I truly believe like my it's called the wake up call. And it started with
Yeah.
the idea that could I help people wake up before their wake up call? So I don't think, and I guess what I've come to learn is you can't actually do that, nor should you want to. These wake up calls that we have are important. You shouldn't try and alleviate those completely. I think if you speak openly and honestly, you can alleviate some of the suffering. Maybe they don't have to sit in that suffering for quite as long,
Mm.
but going through your own experience with this stuff is really, really important because, yeah, I think, yeah, it's an interesting question, and I still don't know how I think about it. I certainly didn't set out to, I don't know, be where
No.
I'm at right now. I think
Yeah.
it's a function of I do want to do my part to make the world a better place. And part of that is sharing, what I'm learning.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the intentions behind it. Yeah. It's I have as I'm sure you do, a kind of a constant conversation in my head about technology. And I think it was a quote from one of your pieces. I'm not sure exactly which one, but it was one of the more insidious things that technology is doing now is it's saving us time and then quietly spending it for us. It does this by expanding what is now possible and what is now expected of us. Do you want to zoom in a bit more about kind of what you were saying there or what was behind that? Because I love that. It kind
Yeah,
of just characterizes so much.
totally. So you can take, I mean, artificial intelligence is the easiest example, but the promise was we are going to automate all of these, boring, mundane tasks that you don't want to do, and boom, you're going to work less and you're going to be more creative and it's going to be great. In reality, I still talk to a lot of people from my old network, founders, executives. They are working harder than ever. You can see it in their eyes. They're like haven't slept, and it's like, man, you gotta chill out. And they have this like rush of dopamine and excitement, and they're just like, no, but like now I can do so much. Now I can do what would have taken me 2 months in 2 days. And so I have to do more. I look at people I know that are individual contributors who their boss is like now expecting them to use AI for everything. And it's not like their quotas or anything have gone down, they have gone up. And so as soon as like it's just never been the case that technology actually lets us live a more happy, connected life. The only thing that can do that is you and the boundaries you set. And even things like social media as well. It's like, oh, it's so great to create and express, but then you don't see, oh, when I posted, now that felt that good and it was kind of beautiful, but now I'm checking back every, 15 minutes to see how it was. So it's spending that time for you, and you see it everywhere. As soon as we gain more time through efficiency, we spend it on another piece of technology.
Mm. Yes. What's also interesting is looking at this through the lens of younger people, in terms of people who are maybe just coming into the workforce now. Perhaps they're still studying and they're asking themselves, "What do I do? What kind of world of work is waiting for me out there? Do I create it? Do I jump into a job?" And one of the things I liked, I think it was one of the parts of your article, was that you've got to try and build a career around a problem to solve rather than a job to do. And I think that is music to my ears. I've always worked for myself. I've always been an entrepreneur. I work best when I'm working for myself. So that makes sense. I think some people can just follow that intuitively, or they do it without thinking necessarily. Whereas with others, a job is something to kind of be given, and I've got to sort of show up, and then, at 5 o'clock, I can kind of clock off. All of that obviously is changing in its own way. But what's interesting is that mindset shift and how that's taking place in a kind of an uneven distribution in a way. And when I help and mentor, I mentor a lot of younger people early in their career. There's kind of still this question of like, what am I going to do for a job? And I always try and sort of like refocus that a little bit to like, what kind of problem do you want to solve? What kind of value do you want to offer? Who do you want to work with? And how can your best gifts show up in the best way, rather than where is the closest and easiest way to secure a paycheck? Now, there's always I suppose, a stress response on thinking that, well, there's no time to think about that, or there's, I can't pick and choose if I'm sitting in a glass house, mixing my metaphors there. But yeah, I just kind of want to draw attention there around what you said and how I think that was really meaningful advice, which maybe you want to expand on a little bit around as well. Orient your career and what you can do and your value around a problem that you can solve and the problem you care about, rather than just showing up for hours.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a recent essay I just published, and the title was You Don't Need a Job in the Future Because There's Too Much Work to Be Done.
It was that one.
And it's it comes from like you. I've had an increasing number of young people reach out to me, and I have a lot of empathy for this next generation. Like, I certainly would not want to be starting my career right now. It's strange out there, really. All of the jobs that were traditional jobs are going to look very different in just a few years. And I really sat down and I was like, okay, if I gave advice to my children, like, what would that look like? And, I think it came from asking a lot of young people, and this is, I don't think, a flaw in young people. It is the world that they have grown up in. Many of them, when I ask, like, well, what do you want to do? It goes immediately to money, like, or sometimes to status in the form of likes, being influenced or whatever. And they'll be like, well, I want to, make $5 million and then retire. And it's like, okay.
And everything
fair.
will be okay.
And everything will be okay. And it's like, fair. I'll meet you there. Cool. That happens. What are you spending your time doing now? And then, many will just pause and they actually will not have an answer. And then some will talk about, well, I love like snowmobiling, or I love, this, that. And it's like, cool. Like, do you want to be a snowmobile? Like, how long could you do that before you realize, oh, okay, this is probably just a distraction, and I can't do this for the rest of my life. And so, this is not a new concept, but I think how people should think about careers is sort of how I have readjusted, because I was in that same camp before. I grew my career and I didn't really think of the change I wanted to bring in the world. I didn't really think of even how I wanted to spend my time. It was, I've got these particular set of skills. How can I leverage those skills to the greatest ability to acquire as many resources, money, and status as I can? And that is, I think, how the vast majority of people are looking at it. And I've kind of switched to this idea that like we can all say, like, go for it. If you want to go climb that mountaintop, there is nothing at the mountaintop. I can tell you that unequivocally. There is nothing. 24 hours, you will feel happy and you'll be back to it. And you'll be looking around and you'll probably by that point have what I call the sickness, and you'll just find another mountaintop and you'll waste your life just
Mm.
climbing increasingly hard mountains that you don't even enjoy. If you like climbing, that's maybe different, but most of the time you don't actually enjoy that climb.
Yeah.
So what if you stepped back and really understood, like, what do I care about deeply? What are a problem that if I woke up every day and I focused on that problem, I would find enjoyment and I would find fulfillment in that. You can go and do that. You can. That is very much within the the realm of possibility. And not only is it in the realm of possibility, I believe that is how you become resilient and adaptable in a market that is always changing. If
Yes.
you are the 1 in 100 in a room of people that find meaning in your work, you are going to outcompete the other 99. When things go hard, you will be able to still get up and do your work. People that find meaning also naturally learn more, they lean in more, they're going to connect more. And so, as the whole world shifts around you, you have this anchor of meaning that is going to propel you forward and allow you to keep doing it. And even if traditional success measures of money, status, or whatever, even in that game, you will win.
Hmm. Yeah, beautifully said. And it's such an important thing to come back to and remind yourself, probably on a daily basis, because it's easy to get so lost in the trappings of almost the dream. It's almost like the dreams of other people, and the dreams of other people and the ambitions of other people. It's very easy for those to suddenly become what's in front of me, and now I think I want those things. I think. And then you kind of go a little while and you realize, whoa, actually, this is not me. This is not what I want. It's what someone else wants. And maybe there's parts of that that excite me, but it isn't completely resonant. And now I can find a way to pay attention to that and realize, well, this is someone else's meaning, probably not mine. And I need to go and find that. And so important what you said about the fact that everything else is always going to be this constant turbulent whirlpool of things and change and uncertainty and madness and noise in the world. And I've got that one anchor point, which I can come back to and return to. And then it's that compass. And without that, I suppose that's often why we feel so rudderless, because we haven't spent enough time finding that meaning.
Yeah. Yeah. And oftentimes you go down that sort of ladder of synthetic meaning of like you're living someone else's meaning dream, but theirs is also synthetic from like what their parents taught them and then
Yeah.
their parents before them taught them. And it's just this ladder of this synthetic fake meaning that isn't actually serving, anyone. And, it's I'll I'll share like a personal anecdote for like my journey. I again admittedly chased the wrong things. I was definitely living someone else's version of meaning. And I went and through the work I was doing and sitting in, 10 hours of meditation a day, doing all sorts of different journeys and things. And I got really clear on my purpose and my meaning. And that was I want to spend my life transforming fear into love. And I know that sounds like woo-woo, but that
No, it
is
doesn't.
that is what feels like a really meaningful problem to me. If I spent my life every day doing that, whether I made $1 from it or not, I would wake up at 85 years old and be like, fuck, that was a cool way to spend my life.
Mm.
And then I went on a journey of, okay, if that is true, how could I go about doing that? And, it started within. I need to do that for myself and continue to do that for myself every day to help others do that. But then it was, okay, what do I want to bring into the world? What do I want to do? There was still a little bit of ego wrapped up into it. And, that's what has brought me to serving that mission through Wake Up Call and sharing my story and helpful pieces that might help people transform parts of their fear
Yeah.
into love. And then hands-on work through the Enfold Institute, which I've joined. And, you know, there was a big part of me that was like, I've had this big career. I need to be like a CEO. I need to build my
Yeah.
own place. And it was like, well, there's someone in a team that is already serving that mission, like as well as I've ever seen it done. Could I just be humble enough and say, hey, I'm going to offer my service to you
Mm.
and we're going to do this together. And that was a really interesting piece of my own journey. Is sometimes when we, um, the cost of being in service and doing really meaningful work is oftentimes your ego. Like
Mm.
you have to be okay with um, chopping wood and carrying water in service of that mission, you know?
Yeah. I suppose also part of it is knowing what you don't want and then being able to kind of have a sense of your own history because you've done what you don't want already. It's hard to tell someone who feels like they're climbing the mountain and they're really close to that peak. And then they sort of see you coming down and they go, oh, don't bother, you should turn around. It's not really worth it. Are they really going to turn around? Are they going to go, no, fuck, man, I'm going to go, this is what I'm doing, right? And I don't care how many great warnings or good advice you give me, I'm still going to go for it, right? And so, and until they have their own experience of going, well, maybe that wasn't worth it, or there's a blizzard on the top and they get knocked off, or something crazy happens that forces them to decelerate because they're just being accelerating all the time, then they won't know what that is. It's almost like saying to someone, don't bother doing that, and they don't have their own frame of reference yet. And so that advice feels wafer thin to you. You've got that frame of reference, so you know what it's like to work at a call center and work, at a bullshit job for 18 months and hate it and have a boss that, treats you like dirt. It's almost like those foundational experiences, especially in the world of work, like what David Graeber called, bullshit jobs and that kind of stuff, where it's like that low value, that sort of foundational experience, character building kind of stuff that sucks, but it necessarily sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of prepares you for the next step. It almost has to be shitty work. And without that, we're kind of robbing an experience in a way. I don't know if you have a thought about that.
I think it's a great call out is this, and that's where again you have to get rid of the ego and have the humility, especially if you're young in your career. So let's say you do spend the time, you find this mission, you're like, okay, that is my mission. The next layer of that is, I like to think that problems they want to be solved, missions they want to be solved, but not by you yet, because you don't have any skills that are going to help that problem be solved. And so this is where the bullshit jobs sometimes come in handy, but you now get to play with that bullshit job in a different way. Of like, okay, I got to go work at this call center and it sucks, but I'm actually learning the skills of communication, of sales, of, negotiation, because that is going to be needed for my mission that is solving this bigger problem. And it just, you build these sort of myths into your life. And it just, if that is the way you're going into your bullshit job of, I'm going to build these skills that one day are going to help me fix old people loneliness or help, more people get access to clean water, like whatever the thing is, you're building the foundation that makes you worthy of solving that problem. And, to your kind of first point of, yeah, I'm not telling anyone who's on their first mountain to stop. I really do think you have to go and climb it yourself. I think I'm more trying to. So my response when I climbed the mountain was immediately to look for another mountain before I thankfully parachuted off. That was what my mind told me, because I had this initial peak. Yes, we did it. And then this big crash. because I had no meaning, I had no identity without a big mountain. So it was immediately, okay, we raised the 54, let's go raise a 150. You go and you immediately do it. And I think we've lost so many people in in that game. And I call that the game of more. And it's just you're just finding another mountain and you're finding
Mm.
another mountain. And it's okay, there's never any judgment. I think the game of more looks a lot like the game of survival. We all have to figure out how to survive, how to feed ourselves, shelter, all of that. Like that's important. You need to build the skills to do that. But at some point, you get out of the game of survival and you go into the game of more, which looks like and feels like the game of survival. But all you're doing is just acquiring a better roof, more house, more food, better food, quality food, trips, blah, blah, blah. And I think there is another game on the other side called like the game of meaning, or whatever you want to call it, which is finding that problem that lights you up, that is why you believe you are here. It can change, of course, but I think we lose so many of our best and brightest in this game of more. And I'm just hoping to inspire even some to graduate from that game.
What do you think about artificial intelligence? And I suppose I want to kind of qualify what I'm saying because it's so easy to kind of have a junk answer to a junk question. But um, when we're talking about the kinds of things that are accelerating and then also making a case here for some of the things that we should look at decelerating in our lives, the kind of arc of artificial intelligence just seems to definitely be, it's climbing the peak of the mountain. It's going up. It's not stopping. It's not slowing down. Is there some part of us that can kind of, keep in touch and take advantage where it's needed, where we can take the good from the good and maybe decelerate away from some of the noise or some of the kinds of things that we're not sure about yet around AI? I'm not sure if you have almost like a principle of thinking around what to do about AI. And, it's someone walking down the street. Do I need to make space for my life for AI? Do I not need to? How do I get on the train without being completely absorbed by it? Because it kind of carries its own hype and news cycle, obviously, as well. So how do I sort of keep a hand in so that I know what's going on and I can kind of navigate still without being sucked in and allowing it to completely derail my own compass?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. I think you don't want to fall on either side of the kind of spectrum. You need to find a middle ground, just as most things. I see the folks that I know that are just all in. Again, the founders with bags under their eyes I'm talking about, who are like really fearful that they're going to fall behind, and so they're all in. They're automating everything. Um, you know, it's as if, I gave this example previously in an article I wrote, that it's if you're going 100 miles per hour down the highway in a car, and your objective, is to efficiently make a right-hand turn, you need to decelerate. But I think in the modern world, efficiency and speed are like synonymous, and those are different things. Efficiency is how quickly can you get to your outcome in like the best manner. But I think we were told that it's speed. So a lot of people right now are actually hitting accelerator when they're already going 100 miles per hour. So they are not going to make that exit, let alone they won't have the time to even realize that there is an exit there, or that they want that exit, or there's good stuff on the other side of that exit. They're just speed is the religion, that's what I also say, is like speed has become our religion and our God is like immediate outcomes. And I see that everywhere. And so that is one camp. I don't think you can think clearly or get to your objectives in that way. And then the other camp is like, call it like Luddites who are just like, no, anti-technology. I don't want to use it. It's negative. It's bad. And, you can't afford to do that either, because if you play that out in even 5 years' time, you're going to, pop up your head and you are not going to recognize the world that we live in. Even I think of people who, try not to have a phone now. You actually can't, like your banking passwords and like all this shit, like you have to. So there's a middle ground, I think, where you're playing around with it, you're understanding it, um, but you're not getting so caught up in it. And yeah, I like to think of it almost as like an interactive book, when there's something I'm interested, it is really cool that I can ask hyper specific questions that would be really hard to flip through a million books and find it and poke holes in my logic and my thinking. And okay, I'm thinking this is a way that I can operate in the world. What am I missing from that? And so, yeah, I think having it as a thinking partner rather than an assistant that's doing like everything in your life, because I worry if we, again, expand our capabilities, the vast majority shouldn't have lives where we need 14 agents to run our lives. If that is the case, I think we've done something horribly wrong. I find the more simple I make my life, the better it is. So I think we have pretty complex lives if we all need, a bunch of AI agents running everything for us.
Yeah. And even just the word agent. And I do a lot of AI work, and I'm busy with an amazing business right now in kind of enabling their team and what they do. And so much of kind of what I do is to work with agents, but I'm realizing more and more that it's not the AI agents that are the ones that I'm needing to spend time with. It's the human agents, and it's all of the kind of the process of reacquainting themselves with the ability to think through a process and to not just play a role in a process, but to change it and to mold it and to rethink it and to be creative with it, so that it's not just better, because that's also just a vague word, but can this unlock more value for everyone, where maybe we don't need to AIify what we're doing at all. We can just level up what the humans are doing, and then the process takes care of itself. And sometimes, like you said, it's about just simplifying things and removing variables rather than adding more in, just so that there's a sort of a theater of productivity. Because a lot of the time it is a theater. It's the show of, Cal Newport. It's kind of what it looks like. And it looks good, but you kind of, run your finger through it and then it all kind of crumbles and caves in. So there's so much around that word agent, which can be applied to humans and how we can rediscover our own agency a little more. And perhaps that's what unlocks everything that we really want to believe is true about AI in that way too. We kind of need to do the work on ourselves first.
Yeah, for sure. I mean that you said the theater around AI, like there's so much of that right now. I unfortunately heard of a pretty large company, their last layoffs were largely around who was using the most AI tokens, which is an insane thing to like make that the, if you weren't using enough AI tokens, that's how like they made decisions, which is just insane. And that happened, and then they kind of double clicked on it, and it had nothing to do with productivity, right? That was like someone making a memo for their manager who was getting 20 memos from their whole team, and then that they had to make their memo, and then no one was reading any of the bullshit, you know. Again, it's this idea that uh, more is better or speed equals productivity. Like we have made these connections, I think, that are really breaking down in a real way.
What do you think, in your view, just going further into that exact situation you mentioned, what do you think is underneath that behavior where I think I can get away with, adding in more tokens, and the usage for the tokens might just be bullshit, asking AI, is it possible to, ride a pelican all the way to New York City, whatever it is, stupid stuff, but it's showing up in my token usage. Therefore, I think I'm doing the right thing, or I'm keeping my job, or I'm finding a way to game the system without actually doing the work, or use it in a way that's intended. Do you think it's because we can get away with it? Do you think there's a resistance to change? Obviously, we're speaking generally now, but that is not a new behavior, that kind of thing, where we think we can game something and we can get away with it, and we can still kind of, have our cake and eat it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of these things, what's the quote? Show me the incentive and I'll show you the behavior,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they're incentive problems. If I believe that my company wants me to use AI, more than anything, more than even delivering what I'm supposed to be doing, that they want me to figure out AI, like that's what I'm going to spend most of my time doing, whether it's productive or not. Again, it starts down this road of theater. And yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I think it's an incentive problem that we're looking at the wrong metrics for people right now.
At the same time, there's something about humanity that I trust us to get it right, whether it's by trial and error, whether it's, kind of a mixture of hope and fear. I think that somewhere the signal will always prevail in some way, and sometimes that ends up being 20 years too late. But I think that there's a way to kind of realize the benefits, not just of AI, but for us to sort of, I think that diamonds come out of the coal, for a reason, and there's always a way. There's always someone who is able to invent or to create or dream something in the bleakest of times. There's that stuff going on. There's still people writing poetry. There's still people falling in love and choosing to have kids. There's still these things that happen in our world, no matter how desperate or dark things become. And this kind of relates to something that you added at the end of your big article, which was around finding God. I'd love for you to double click on that, and because there's so many ways to take it. There's so many ways to feel immediately resistant to what you said, which is also what you prefaced it on, about. You were like, hold with me. Here's a big one, a bonus one. I want to kind of just explore that with you, why, that is necessary, not only in the age of acceleration and how to prepare for the decade, but what you meant and what are the possible meanings of being able to find what that is.
Yeah, that one got the most reaction, both negatively and positively. I thought it was really important to include in the article because I think it is the most important part of this. So when I say look for God, you can use any word that you feel more comfortable with. It can be love, can be truth, can be source, can be connection, whatever of God means to you. And I intentionally use the word look, not find God or believe in God. Because again, this is all just from my personal experience, but as I've gone in this journey of searching for meaning and who I am and my place in the world, and you can't help but start learning about okay, how did people find meaning in the past? Largely through religion. And then you start studying different religions, and they seem, many of them, to be pointing in the same direction. And it is some variation of there is something bigger out there. Humans are, and you and your soul is part of that something bigger. You are that bigger. And, a journey of meaning is just understanding the connections between those two ideas. And I think that the longer you search and the more you go down that path, the more you believe that to be true, that we are all one, we are all connected, we are all just biologically part of this planet. There's no, we are all that stuff, and even further than that, the universe. Like we are all made of the same things. And why I think that's an important thing to, again, not know intellectually, know as part of your felt and lived experience, is because when you start to circle that truth, and that truth starts to become real for you, a natural transformation is going to happen. At least it has for all the people that I've walked with on the journey. If that is true and we are all one, then you will naturally transform to wanting to be of more service, to have more compassion, to have more humility, to have more empathy for your fellow humans, to care about the planet, to care about the animals, all of that. And I think that is what we need more than any of the other stuff. That's how we're going to be able to steward artificial intelligence responsibly. That's how we're going to be able to create a future that looks bright for all of us and not just some of us.
Mm. When I read that, I was amazed by my own kind of response to it. Because when I read that, I was like, totally makes sense. And not only totally makes sense, I was almost like, wow, this article wouldn't really have kind of properly gone the depth it might have without that kind of mention. And why I was surprised at why I thought that was because I can kind of remember who I was and my own mind, let's say over the last 10, 15 years, back to when I used to, binge watch videos of Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens and kind of, think about anything that began with the G word as just poison, as this kind of story that's there to corrupt us, and that there's this kind of like dogma, and that it's all bad, and that, down with religion and all that, and how kind of small-minded a lot of that is. And that's not to say that I'm a religious person, because I'm not at all. But I've been able to find a different direction with that word, and which is why I think you've perfectly encapsulated that. Whereas it doesn't matter so much about what the story of God is. It matters to you, and it matters to what that is, and how ultimately it makes you feel. Because really what we're wanting is the feeling of there being a God. And with that feeling, with that beautiful way that people who are believers, they go to church, they pray, they read the books, they go on pilgrimages, and the way they feel is then what inspires the behavior and ultimately how they want to show up and be of service in the way that you described. So whatever that feeling is, and the source of that feeling, the source of things being, it's okay, you're on track, you're on path, you are enough, you're supported, wherever that source comes from, source, that's another good word for it, is what you can kind of substitute in there for what God might be. It might be Christian, it might be Muslim, it might be up in the sky, it might be something in the plants. Doesn't really matter so much about what material name we give it, but rather about the feeling and how it makes us feel and what that feeling then inspires. Mm. And I think that's such a great way to sort of see it, and in a way how you described it, because that's what allows us to sort of connect with that meaning that we were talking about earlier, to kind of have that as the anchor point in our lives. And then that is that constant strength that we can return to, especially when things feel dicey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Really well said. And it's, when I think of, call it spirituality, like I don't practice any form of religion myself, but I think there's beauty in all of it. And I think when we talk about spirituality or God or these concepts, what everyone wants is they want to feel more connected to themselves.
Yeah.
They want to be more connected to those they love. They want to be connected to something greater than themselves. And I think that's what we're talking about when we think about seeking. Like that's a worthwhile thing to seek. How can I feel more connected to myself? How can I be more connected to the people I love? How can I be more connected to something bigger? And again, when you walk that path long enough, it starts to feel pretty damn true. And you want to help others when they're ready, walk down that path with you. And I think if enough of us walk down that path, the world starts to get a little bit better in whatever corner of the world you're in.
Mm. It's such an empowering message, an empowering thing to do, and strange that it feels strange, isn't it? That's a kind of a new thing for people to realize, for any of us to realize, to kind of like, I can...
It's a very old new thing.
Yes, totally. I can be the main character in my life. I can make decisions. I can show up and do good things and be of service, and I can help make the change I want to see. Mm-hmm. Wow. Reacquaint yourself with that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. It's funny.
Yeah.
I was talking to my friend who's the co-founder of Enfold, the retreat that I'm working at, and we were talking, and like you said, that felt so foreign that I didn't actually believe that I could live my life in service of others. I do not know why. I knew that other people did it, but it just did not seem realistic for some reason. And then as I've gone out, I realized wow, there are many people that live their life that way, in service to other people, in service to a big, meaningful problem. And I think we just need that number to grow. I think they say the tipping point's like 3.5%. If we can get 3.5% of the population doing that, then apparently that's the tipping point. So I think we can do it.
Wonderful. I really enjoyed our conversation. I'm sure it's the first of many. Before we end off, is there anything you're working on now? Anything that's kind of got your attention? Maybe it's something you're researching, something you're writing, a project you're getting into. What's on the cards for you?
Yeah. Check out, Wake Up Call on Substack if anything that we talked about is of interest to you. Starting to wrestle with how I bring some of those ideas to life, some of these ways that I believe we can have an impact on making this planet better, and bring those into the real world versus just writing. So there might be some things coming out with that. And yeah, I think the work we're doing at Enfold Institute is really cool. So check out enfold.org if you are interested in any sort of transformation or a lot of things we talked about. It's a psychedelic wellness center that's just doing amazing work.
Fabulous. Well, you heard it here. Scott, thank you. Come back. Yeah.
Thank you, brother. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Humble Mind. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're curious to take a look at our community, if you're not a member, you're missing out. Make sure you head to humblemind.co to check out more and to see what we're up to. I look forward to seeing you there. Until next time.